Baseball's back. Next Best Bet, episode 62. We're back. Brett Levy, Jake Higgins, opposite coasts. He's in New York, I'm in Oregon, and we got some betting lines to finally give you again. We've been giving you sports news by the spoonful, basically, twice a week since the coronavirus started. Now we got some sports lines, Brett.
Baseball, happy opening day, Jake Higgins. Happy opening day. 2.0, I guess.
And some good games we have coming up too. But before we get to the MLB, and we're going to get right to it, we're going to talk about Beginners Boulevard first, though, because you want to learn this term if you aren't familiar with betting baseball. And considering there aren't other sports going on really right now, maybe you're going to introduce yourself to betting baseball. So we're going to talk about the run line, and it's baseball's version of the spread. It's typically -1.5 and +1.5, and it's going to typically mitigate the risk for you, and it's going to make it around -110 each way. Not always. Typically, there can be a lopsided opponent that will shift those, but it's going to make it a lot more even odds typically.
Yeah, there's going to be some juice, and the reason it's not a true spread is just because of the low scoring nature of the sport. We see it in hockey with a goal line. In baseball, you have a run line.
We have seen more and more scoring over the past decade or so in baseball, though. So sometimes these run lines, when you know that it's going to be a very good team facing off against maybe a team that's expected to be in the lower half of the league, then you can confidently hit these run lines. Like, for example, Brett, and we're going to jump into baseball's opening day right now. The Dodgers versus the Giants. The San Francisco Giants, we went over it, I believe it was last episode, the MLB divisions preview, where the NL West, the Giants are at the very bottom of that, and the Dodgers are about a -500 favorite for the NL West division. So that's why the Dodgers are favored -1.5 at -144, and you would still get positive money if you took the Giants +1.5 at +124.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, this is the nightcap tomorrow night. There's a much bigger game going on before, but the Giants and Dodgers are always fun when they get together. A real rivalry started in New York, shifted out to the West Coast, and Cueto Kershaw, great matchup in this one. I'm actually going to be on this game. I think you are too, Higgins, but I'm going to ride with the Dodgers at -1.5 on that -144 juice.
So you're taking the run line then?
I am. I am going to be on this run line. I think I get a true ace with Clayton Kershaw on the mound. Cueto's not the same guy he was in the beginning of his career. And I get, if not the best lineup in baseball, the second best lineup in baseball.
And a very motivated man in Mookie Betts, who reportedly just got agreed to a contract extension on Wednesday. He's going to be locked up in Los Angeles for 13 years, including this year. He's signing a 12-year, sources are saying roughly a $365 million extension. Add that to the $27 million he's making this year. Brett, that's a 13-year, $392 million. So he's damn near making $400 million with the Dodgers.
I just want to throw it out there. Jake and I will sign with anyone for 6 years, $135 million. So you get two of us for half the price.
And you know what? Depending on where that guaranteed money is, we're talking about that Patrick Mahomes contract, I might be able to even lower that number a little bit more. So, you know what? We're out there. We're open to the possibilities.
Stop. We gotta max. You gotta ask for a max amount, and then you negotiate down. You can't start negotiating down, Higgins.
It's about that guaranteed money, not about that incentive total, Brett. We're on different sides of this. It's going to end up being our downfall maybe at the negotiating table.
Drew Rosenhaus, I'm sorry, man. Higgins learned nothing from your negotiating classes.
Probably because I wasn't there. But before we have the Dodgers-Giants game, that is the nightcap, like you mentioned, Brett, and you said that you're going to be on the run line. I should quickly mention I'm taking the over at 8 runs, and that's mainly just because of the firepower of the Dodgers offense. I think the Dodgers are going to have to carry me to take that over. I don't think the Giants are going to get maybe 2 or 3 runs. Don't expect more than that. I think the Dodgers would need a confident 5 or 6 for me to be comfortable with hitting that 8-run total. but it's minus 102, and there's the chance for the push because there isn't a hook on it. So I'm okay with taking that risk at 8. But the better game that you mentioned, the first game, the opening day game of the season, the one that Dr. Fauci is throwing out the first pitch for, the New York Yankees are playing in Washington, D.C. against the Nationals. And this is Garrett Cole versus Max Scherzer. It is going to be a pitcher's duel.
Yeah, what a treat for opening day. I can't wait for this game. I'm going to bet it an alternative way, which I can discuss a little bit later. But you said it: Scherzer versus Garrett Cole. The Yankees minus 1.5 on the run line at plus 122 payout. What the Nats plus 1.5 on the run line, minus 144 payout. On the money line, the Yankees are minus 130. The Nats are plus 114. And the over under in this one is 7.5. So you mentioned you got the other game at 8. You could push. No pushing in this one, Higgins.
No, there is not, and that's why I'm not finding myself on this over under. Not to mention, I mentioned it's a pitcher's duel, and I can never confidently bet the under. If I was an under betting man, I would probably take this under 7.5 because I really do think that Cole and Scherzer are going to have fantastic outings, like is to be expected from them. But Brett, this is why we see run lines the way that they are. I mean, you mentioned the Yankees minus 1.5, but they're positive money at plus 122. That means the book's not confident that this is going to be a game that is won by more than one run. So this is going to be a tight game. This is a game that should come down to the end potentially and keep everyone, all of the bettors on their seats. That's why I'm sticking to the money line, and I'm going with the home team, the Washington Nationals, the World Series champs from last year, and I'm getting them at positive money at plus 114, and I really don't think he can beat that.
So, unfortunately, I don't know who's going to win this game. So, I'm staying away from who I think's going to win, who I think's going to lose. But you know what I do think, Higgins? I think starting pitchers are only going to go 5 innings, maybe 6. So I'll get 3 innings of Washington National relievers against, again, if not the best lineup in baseball, then the second best lineup. It's the Dodgers, it's the Yankees. Those are the two lineups in baseball. Uh, for my money, that are 1 and 2 in the league. And I think the Yankees are going to score over 4 runs tomorrow at minus 110. The Yankees overs is one of my favorite bets in sports. I don't need the other team to carry any weight, like in your Dodgers Giants over bet. I just need the Yankees to show up.
Yeah, but they're facing Scherzer, and
They
you're
are. They
you're
are.
you're saying that Scherzer only pitches 5 innings. If he goes 7, that 4 runs is a much harder job, I think, Brett. But to your point originally, this is one of the pillars that we have. I mean, on the podcast, we've mentioned a few times if Jake and Brett are on the same bet, you don't want to be with us on it. Run away because we do not win often when we have the same opinions on a specific wager. But, Brett, another one of these pillars is during baseball season, bet the Yankees over. And this is something that was founded last year just on how solidly they played.
Yeah, I mean the Yankees score runs. They play half their games in Yankee Stadium. This one's in Nats ballpark. No fans, so we'll see what happens. I think Scherzer Cole. I was hesitant to take the Yankees scoring 4 runs on Scherzer, but then I was like, you know what, Scherzer's probably only going 6 innings max tomorrow, realistically. So I think I'll have 3 innings with that bullpen. So that means 1 through 9 will all get to face some sort of reliever, and I'll take my chances there. 2 bloops, 2 blasts. That's all I need, Higgins.
Well, we talked about how this game's going to be in Washington. It's going to be an away game for the Yankees. Brett, we don't know whether the Blue Jays will be having any home games yet because they've been not allowed to play in Toronto. They're not allowed to play in Pittsburgh, even though that was their second plan. They've been denied 2 cities now, and They're coming up quick on their opening day event, which is the 29th, against the Nationals. So that's supposed to be a home game. Is there a chance that we just see the Toronto Blue Jays end up playing nothing but away games this year?
So I think that's a realistic possibility. Ken Rosenthal tweeted that earlier that that's a possibility. Obviously, what it would be the Blue Jays would be batting second. Just the game would be at Nationals Park.
Yes.
So I just wanted to put that little clarifier in there. They wouldn't actually be playing 60 road games.
Yes.
They'd
I
just
should
be
also clarify, they start their season with 5 road games. They play a series in Tampa, and then they play a series in Washington before they're supposed to have their home opener. So their technical opening season game is on Friday in Tampa Bay, and they have 5 games to figure this out. They have until July 29th, next Wednesday, to figure this out, but that's still not a lot of time.
no, you need to figure this out before the 29th. The team needs to know where they're going. Yeah, it's worrisome. I think they have 3, 4 realistic options. I think Buffalo's an option. I think their spring training facility's an option, although with that being in Florida, you're a little bit worried. And then I think you can look at more ready ballparks. I mentioned one on our last podcast, such as Charlotte. Charlotte is a state of the art ballpark. I don't care if it's AAA or not. That thing is good to go. So I'm sure there are a few others in America that are like that. Maybe there are some closer to the Northeast that the Blue Jays would prefer, but I think those are really your options there, Higgins. You go to the Blue Jays minor league affiliate in Buffalo, you go to your spring training park, or you just go to a AAA park that is ready to go.
I feel like the legitimate second option for Toronto probably would have been Montreal, who still has a functioning baseball stadium, but they run into the same issue that they did with Toronto of the international travel of teams, which I believe is why their request to have games in Toronto was ultimately canceled and turned down. So interesting. We're going to keep our eye on where the Blue Jays will be playing this year. It's certainly not going to be Toronto. And will we end up having an interesting team name this year like the Charlotte Blue Jays instead?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Montreal is not even really an option because the whole problem is that no one can go into Canada. Otherwise, they'd be playing at
Exactly.
home. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, you gotta go. You gotta go either AAA, whether that's your own team or a stadium that is up to these major league players' standards, or you just put it at their spring training hub and battle through the Florida difficulties that the other two Florida teams are battling through.
But this is not the only last minute logistics that are being figured out right now. Because, Brett, you told me before the show that the MLB and the MLBPA are trying to negotiate an expanded playoff format now. What's going on with this?
There's talks that they're going to try and make it a 16 team playoff, Higgins. I don't know, man. We had months. We had months. What were we doing?
Clearly, everyone in sports are like me and they just procrastinate everything
If
because they had so much time to deal with this and figure this out, but they're still trying to tweak and nitpick and do this and do that. No, you guys made an agreement. Just stick with it. Do the normal 10-team playoff scenario. I feel like this is probably something the MLB and the owners are probably pushing for more because it would mean more revenue, more TV games, stuff like that later in the year. But if you expand the playoff format, then you're running into the same issue that you and I have talked about before in terms of how late does this MLB season go, and can you realistically play games in late November in some of these stadiums? The answer is no.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck is going on. You guys dropped the ball. You left the money on the table and you can't go back and scoop it up. Someone already took it.
You lost the fumble. But Brett, let's move on to the NBA now because there has been some positive news out of the Orlando bubble. 0 coronavirus cases out of 350 players that have been tested in Orlando. So far, there's no cases now. Teams have been mainly staying to themselves, very limited friend groups, not really any scrimmages or anything like that. So we'll see as competition picks up what that's going to really mean and if these numbers can change. I mean, the Disney employees, they're not subject to the same protocols as the NBA are, for example. So something could still potentially get brought into the facility through means like that beyond just the players and the NBA staff. But it's comforting to see that it is contained early on in the bubble.
Yeah, and I mean, your guy Zion's testing every day too, so that's good also, Higgins.
Yes, Zion, he's still intent on returning to the Pelicans. The Pelicans are going to be fighting for one of the final Western Conference seeds, and they need Zion to do it, to be frank. So in order for him to be able to make it back in time, he has been testing himself or getting tested every single day, and as long as he tests negative the 7 days prior to returning to the bubble, he will only need to quarantine for 4 days when he re-enters the bubble, meaning the latest that he can show up and be available for their opening night game on July 30th is July 26th, Sunday. So Zion has a timeline. We'll see if he's able to meet that timeline. He left the bubble for personal family, I believe it was urgent reasons, is why he left the bubble. So who knows if he's on track to be able to make it back in time for that or if he's still going to be with his family. But interesting to see that the Pelicans may very well have their star rookie.
Yeah, Zion left for Family Matters. Patrick Beverly just left for Emergency Family Matters. So I hope everything is okay with Patrick Beverly and his family. But that would be a big loss for the Clippers in any of these 8 games as well, and not to mention the postseason. So we'll keep our eye on that from a sports and gambling, fantasy, all that perspective.
Oh,
But
real quick, Brett, before you shift there, another MLB point just off of what we were mentioning with the NBA players right there. We got official word that Mike Trout will be playing, and we know he was up in the air because his wife is pregnant and he wasn't sure about being able to leave and potentially come back or anything like that. So Trout said he's playing.
well, he'll play and then he'll leave when the kid's there, and we'll see where the Angels are in the standings. And then you could talk about how they were a good investment, or I can make fun of you and say the Rangers were a good investment. So I'm glad we have that tape to go back to, Higgins.
Shohei Otani. Shohei Otani.
name name 3 Angels starters. Go.
Shohei Otani. Otani, comma Shohei. And Shohei. Back to the NBA though, because we mentioned some players that are intent on returning. Marvin Bagley's out for the Kings with a foot injury. He's not going to be returning this season.
No, that is a bummer. That is a player who obviously the Kings had high expectations for. They picked him over Luka Doncic. They picked him over Trey Young. So that's a big loss for the Kings.
It is. Now, the NBA is having their scrimmages. I believe they started Wednesday night. So as we are recording this, Brett, because we did see Ball had a double double in his first game with the Nuggets, and man, he looks dangerous out there. I don't know why he wasn't with the team earlier. They have a very interesting lineup when they're able to use him.
Yeah, the Denver Nuggets started a lineup today of Nikola Jokic, who's a 7 footer, Jeremy Grant, who's a Cuse boy, first and
Whoop,
foremost. Let's
there we
go
go.
Cuse. But he's 6'8". Bol started the game, another 7 footer. Paul Millsap started at 6'7", and their last starter, Mason Plumlee, another 7 footer. So pretty big lineup there. And in other big news on Wednesday, the Rockets got Russell Westbrook back, and I just want to remind people at the deadline, the Rockets got very small. And
Yes, they
this
did.
and this lineup that the Nuggets played was very big. So even with the news of Russell Westbrook back, the Rockets must have been out there going, "Oh shit."
Do you see Ball did run the floor pretty well though? I mean, I saw a highlight where he got a block, got the rebound, and then dribbled all the way up, dribbled behind the back to make himself open, and shot a three. He ran in transition, was able to get some points as well. I mean, it helps when you're a young 7 footer as compared to one of the older guys in the league. I'm sure that wears on the knees a little bit, but he looks like he can definitely be a hidden asset for that Denver Nuggets team when I think everyone was expecting the impact to come from Michael Porter in terms of the new guy on the block for Denver.
Well, Denver, like you mentioned with Michael Porter Jr., they take risk on these high upside, uh, lot of potential players. You know, Bol was a 5-star recruit. Michael Porter Jr. was the number one player in the country. Both of them had their college seasons end early due to injury. Both of them missed large chunks of their rookie year due to injury. So, trusting your medical staff, trusting what they say, and taking risk on talent makes a lot of sense, especially when you're picking towards the back end of the lottery, like the Nuggets were doing when they selected Michael Porter Jr. And they took a second round flyer on Bol. These are minimal investments with high upside.
Yeah, Ball was the 44th pick of the NBA draft, 44 Syracuse number. We tie it into everything we can around here if you haven't noticed already. But just to put into reference what the odds are for Denver right now after seeing them play, they are currently plus 2,500. They're sitting in seventh with seventh best odds with the Bucks, Lakers, Clippers, Rockets, Celtics, Raptors, and then the Nuggets.
Well, yeah, and I saw New Orleans was beating up on Brooklyn, so maybe they don't need Zion, or maybe the I don't know what you want to call these makeshift nets that have traveled down to Orlando, but it's certainly not the roster that was playing before this break or pause or whatever you want to call it, the COVID pause.
We'll see how much these exhibition games actually translate into the real games once the season starts back up on July 30th. It'll be interesting to see, but we're finally getting some glimpses of sports. I'm sure if you watch Sports Center tonight or you go onto social media even, you're going to start seeing actual highlights again and not just these TikTok videos or random flashback videos of sports. You're going to have some fresh new highlights that are being shared, and I'm sure we can all breathe a sigh of relief to have some new content going around.
I was 1 week away from starting the NBB TikTok dances with Jake Higgins there. So
We were really close.
I'm glad no one needs to see, no one needed that, but we were going to give it to you, but now no one needs it, no one wants to see it. They've got sports highlights to watch.
What people do want to see, though, and we got another one of them, is UFC Fight Island, Brett. It's Whitaker versus Till on Fight Island, Yaz Island. It's a fight night event, meaning it's not pay per view, it's just ESPN Plus again. And Brett, I am taking Whitaker. It's the main event, the middleweight fight, and I think Whitaker's going to get back on track here. He had won 9 straight fights before he lost to Israel Adesanya and gave up the belt last year. This was 10 months ago. He's had a 10-month break. He's coming off of that loss, and Adesanya is just a beast. The man is 18 and 0. He's unlike a fighter that we have seen recently in the UFC, and I fully expect Whitaker is going to jump back on track compared to Till, who's had a rough go at it. I mean, he did get a win against Gastelum back in November, but he lost to Jorge Masvidal the fight before that, and then he lost the belt to Woodley before that. And those 2 losses weren't by the judge's decision. Those were a knockout TKO and a submission. So those are definitive losses by Darren Till. I think Whitaker's going to get back on the right track here.
Well, Higgins, I'm glad after taking all these dogs and seeing all these favorites win, you finally hopped on a favorite here in Fight Island. You learned.
Yes, Whitaker is minus 130, and watch Brett. Just because you said that, it's gonna kick me in the ass, and Darren Till's gonna end up getting the win or something. Just watch it.
You
I already
know,
placed the bet though.
I apologize if I hurt you, but I'm happy to see a minus number on a Fight Island card for you, man. That brings a smile to my face because woof, it's been a rough go for the dogs on Fight Island.
Now, I believe there are 16 fights on Fight Island on Saturday, so that's probably not going to be the only fight that I'm on, but that's the only fight that I'm giving out on the podcast right now. So you're going to want to make sure to follow our social media to make sure you get any of these other picks. Plus, we're going to have daily baseball now, and we're going to be giving out picks on those days in between our podcast events on the social media platforms. So the Next Best Bet Facebook page, at NBB Pod on Twitter, and Next Best Bet on Instagram. That's at Next Best Bet on Instagram. Brett, a little bit more news before we get out of here. Of course, I think Seattle listens to Next Best Bet because their their NHL franchise is announcing the team name, it seems, on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock Pacific time, and that's going to be basically hours after this podcast goes live.
Yeah, it's tough. They wanted to wait till noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I get it. They're in the Pacific time zone. That's where they play. That's where their city's located. That's where their fans are. But our podcast comes out, Seattle. I mean, could you at
Could
least send us an email with the team name and maybe we delay the release of our podcast, but it makes it. I mean, what are we doing here?
could have helped a guy out. Could have scratched our back. We'd have scratched yours.
Yeah,
But
we
you
would have
you
been
know what?
Seattle fans. We would have rooted for the Seattle team. So what do you think it is? We'll just take a blind guess. I'm guessing Krakens. That's my guess.
I'm with you. I think it's Kraken. I mean, just based off of the tweet that the franchise sent out, that they said big news was coming at 9 a.m. It was a fishing uh, video. It's a fishing boat that throws out the big net, and as they're bringing it back in, it doesn't show what's inside the net. There have been rumors it could be sockeyes because that's a salmon that is often fished off of the Pacific coast, but I don't think it's going to be sockeyes. I mean, the alliteration Seattle Sockeyes sounds nice, but Kraken is what I've heard for months. It's gotten very positive reviews online from what are going to be Seattle fans. I think it's a good mascot name.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, you're our official Pacific Northwest correspondent. So, if Higgins says Krakens, it's Krakens. That's what I'm saying.
I do have one condition. If it's going to be the Seattle Kraken, there has to be some sort of sponsorship deal with the Kraken Rum Company. You know that big bottle of rum that has
For
the
sure.
Kraken on it and everything? That has to be somehow incorporated, whether it's the official alcohol of the team at their stadium or if they have enough money to sponsor the actual stadium, which I would assume that's probably already taken care of at this point. But
Oh, it had some crazy name. I
If
forget
Kraken
what it
is the
was.
name, I think the alcohol has to come with it.
Yeah, no, I like that. The stadium name was terrible, but that's okay. It's a stadium name. It's whoever pays the big money.
Oh,
Uh,
it's the Climate Pledge Arena.
the Climate Pledge Arena. There you go. Yeah, great name. So you sell out. You take the money. I totally agree. I would do the same thing. My one request for the Seattle Kraken would be that when they come out onto the ice, I want the scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where they say "Unleash the Kraken." Yeah, that's what you come out to in the stadium. He goes, "Unleash the Kraken." The team comes out. It'll be great. That'll get the people going. And that's my one request. I like your request. It's alcohol themed. So there you go. That's our
Now,
suggestions. They're free. They're free, but no more
the,
free ones.
now the thing is that the only hindrance I see about Kraken, though, I mean, the Detroit Red Wings, they have this tradition of throwing octopus onto the ice. And so, or maybe it's squid actually, yeah, it's squid, not octopus. Anyways, they throw an they throw a tentacled underwater friend onto the ice, which is what a kraken is. And so, do they take those rights from Detroit, or if they go with the sockeye salmon, are they going to take the throwing the fish on the ice, which is what Nashville does with catfish? Are they going to start throwing salmon onto the ice? I mean, there's a few different options we have here, Brett.
Well, I think what do they do at the market? They just throw fish to each other. So maybe they don't throw them on the ice. Maybe they just all throw fish to each other in the
They just throw
stands.
them down the line in the
Yeah, from
stands.
section 305, you toss it over to section 303, and there you go. That's your tradition.
Everyone from the nosebleeds throws it down to the bottom, and everyone from the bottom tries to throw it back up to the top.
There you
You just
go.
have
You
fish
just
flying
cashing
everywhere.
fish all over the arena.
Well, Seattle, you got Brett and Jake's. You got our ideas right there. I think Kraken is definitely the way to go. That seems to be our consensus here on the next best bet. Do you agree with that, guys? Let us know on social media at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page. I mean, Seattle's going to have their name out basically as soon as this comes out. We already mentioned that. But I want to know, do you like the name? Would you have preferred something else? Let us know on our social media pages. This has been episode 62 of the Next Best Bet. And Brett, I am smiling from ear to ear because we finally got sports back, baby. We got some bets to place, so make sure to follow that social media page. Make sure to subscribe and listen to this podcast weekly again, twice a week actually. We will be back after the weekend, and we're going to have more picks because MLB's back, baby.
Yeah, you know we will be watching opening night, and we look forward to talking to you after a few of these baseball games have been played on Monday.
For Brett, I'm Jake. This has been episode 62. We'll talk to you after the weekend.